What's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Yesterday we watched a little video on Spain's current decisions, and I just saw this video. Is called "Will the EU back Spain against Trump?" Which interesting title. This was posted 3 days ago, so I'm not sure what the situation is exactly now. I think there was some confusion when it comes to Spain letting the US use their bases in Spain. Some people said that they changed their mind, but from what I've seen from Spanish media, I don't think they have. I don't know. But let's see what Europe thought about Spain. Let's see what this video is about.
Oval Office, one EU country.
Oh, excuse me?
Since Donald Trump's return to the Oval Office, one EU country, Spain, has maintained a unique and consistent anti-Trump stance. This week, however, Spain-US relations deteriorated to a new low after Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, refused the US permission to use joint bases on Spanish territory to attack Iran, prompting a furious reaction from Trump, who called Spain terrible and threatened to, quote, cut off all trade with Spain. But Sanchez stayed firm, stating in a post on X on Wednesday, the world, Europe and Spain have faced this critical moment before. In 2003, a few irresponsible leaders dragged us into an illegal war in the Middle East that brought nothing but insecurity and pain. Our response then must be our response now. No to war. So in this video, we'll take a look at the Spain-US rift and explain why relations are unlikely to improve anytime soon.
I already stated in my last video that I was unsure of why Spain decided what they decided, and I found it very odd. And that there's a lot of things in Spain going sideways. There's a lot of things in Spain going sideways because of this person. Well, not because of this person. I mean, I know there's a lot of people below him, but you know, he's the face of it, so because of him.
Trump was the world's most influential person on our recent ranking. So in the latest edition of our magazine, Too Long, we explain how he retained his... As always, there's more to Too Long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. Sanchez and Trump have had rocky relations since day one. As Trump was being inaugurated in a thinly veiled attack on the emerging political alliance between Trump's White House and America's tech tycoons, Sanchez published a clip on X criticizing the techno-caste of Silicon Valley billionaires, citing their omnipotent power over social media to control public debate and therefore government action. Sanchez has also been conspicuously critical of Israel's conduct in Gaza, consistently describing it as a genocide and Trump's support for Netanyahu. Relations deteriorated further after the June 2025 NATO summit in The Hague, when all NATO members, apart from Spain, agreed to a new annual defence spending target of 5% of GDP.
Why? Why not?
Trump had been pushing for this for months, claiming the increase as a big win, but Spain refused to commit to the spending increase, with Sanchez saying it would, quote, not only be unreasonable but also counterproductive, given that many EU countries were struggling with domestic budget issues. Sanchez argued, not unreasonably, that instead of increasing national defence budgets, it would be more cost-effective for the EU to just create a European army, given that the EU already collectively spent hundreds of billions of euros a year on defence. Anyway, in response, Trump said he would make Spain pay twice as much, i.e. by doubling the US's planned tariffs on Spain, but didn't actually follow through in the end, with Spain facing the same 15% tariff as the rest of the EU in July. After this, relations seemed to calm down for a while, notwithstanding Sanchez's condemnation of US strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean, or the US's abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in early January. But things really went downhill over Iran. At the weekend, after Israel and the US launched their joint attack on Iran, Sanchez became the only European leader to publicly criticize both Iran's retaliatory strikes and the US-Israeli attack on Iran, saying one can oppose an odious regime and...
One can oppose a hateful regime and at the same time oppose an unjustified and dangerous military intervention. Okay. Okay. I mean, I do agree with him on this statement, but there's a lot of things I do not agree with. Like, it's kind of like, when you already feel or you already have a little bit of bad feeling about a person, anything they say, you're like, But I try to keep my mind flexible for, information. But
At the same time, oppose an unjustified, dangerous military intervention outside international law. Subsequently, Sanchez denied the US permission to use joint bases on Spanish territory to attack Iran, prompting the US to withdraw 15 military aircraft from the Rota and Moron bases in southern Spain. Unsurprisingly, this didn't go down well with Trump, and on Tuesday, during an Oval Office meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, he seemed to suggest the US could essentially ignore Spain's instructions and use the bases anyway, which would be a galling violation of Spanish sovereignty.
And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it, but we don't have to. But they were unfriendly.
Trump also floated cutting off all trade with Spain, claiming that his administration was looking at imposing a so-called embargo.
And we have the right, as an example, we talked about Spain. I could tomorrow stop, or today, even better, stop everything having to do with Spain. All business having to do with Spain. I have the right to stop it. Embargoes, do anything I want with it. And we may do that with Spain. What do you think?
This would be utter.
What do you think? Yeah, I saw this statement from Trump, and I mean, Spain is part of NATO, so I feel like they should kind of back America up a little bit, That's why I found it kind of odd that they wouldn't let them use their military bases. But I do think it's quite a statement to make, to be like, we could use them if we want to. Like, we know. But I don't know, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I thought it was a powerful thing to say. But yeah, let's see what the rest of this is.
Utterly unprecedented. The closest thing we've seen to a full-on trade embargo in the modern era is probably the Western sanctions on Russia post-Ukraine. But even that doesn't quite amount to a full-on embargo, and the prospect of two NATO allies totally severing all trade would be extraordinary. Nonetheless, we should say that Spain wouldn't actually be that exposed to trade-related disruption with the US. Spain doesn't do that much trade with the US in the first place, and unlike a number of other European countries, which rely heavily on American consumers to buy their stuff, Spain actually runs a trade deficit with the US. This is probably one of the reasons that Sanchez feels more comfortable than some other European leaders in criticising Trump. The Spanish economy is doing pretty well, and isn't exposed to tariffs and similar measures.
The Spanish economy is doing pretty well. Sure is. I can't see it though.
So, what might happen next? Well, we have to say, it's hard to see relations improving anytime soon, largely because Sanchez is unlikely to back down. This is in part because Sanchez has been consistently outspoken in his criticism of Trump's foreign policy for the past year or so, and because Spain is, as we mentioned a moment ago, not that worried about tariffs and other trade-related disruption. But it's also because we reckon Spain is ahead of the curve here. When the war kicked off last week, most European leaders were apparently caught in two minds. They were wary of another legally dubious military intervention in the Middle East, but happy to see the Ayatollah gone, and hopeful for some sort of positive regime change. This is why their original response was so equivocal. Even though they acknowledged it was probably illegal under international law, leaders like Merz were reluctant to criticise it too strongly because, well, they didn't want to be seen as somehow pro-Ayatollah and were hopeful about a positive outcome. However, as the operation descends into an open...
Yeah, so the response has been kind of like, oh, you should have done that, but maybe it turns out good. Like, I feel like that's most of people's response is like, what just happened? But okay, let's see. Hopefully this turns out good. But yeah, okay.
Open-ended quagmire, which does seem to be the direction of travel, popular and elite opinion in Europe is almost definitely going to shift towards Sanchez's position. The timeline has already gone from a quick Venezuela-style operation to 8 weeks, at Hegseth's latest estimation. The Israeli government has basically precluded the possibility of a Venezuela-style outcome by saying they'll kill any successor to Khamenei, and there are numerous reports that the US and Israel are now trying to push Kurdish militias in Iran and Iraq into joining the fray, which would almost definitely mean a prolonged civil war. This would all be terrible news for Europe, which is far more exposed than the US to all the negative externalities of chaos in the Middle East, including the inevitable refugee flows and disruption to energy markets. And this is before we've even mentioned the vibes. Numerous senior American policymakers are now framing this as some sort of holy war. The White House is posting, let's say, distasteful memes on X, and War Secretary
What?
White House is posting, let's say,
Courtesy of the red, white, and blue, and it's a ball. What?
distasteful memes on X, and War Secretary Pete Hegseth is quite explicitly saying that the US will not obey normal rules of engagement. Hence why the US, which hasn't formally declared war on Iran, just blew up an Iranian warship in international waters on its way back from non-military joint exercises with India, and then refused to help the drowning sailors. Even if you're a big MAGA
But isn't that an obligation?
with India, and then refused to help the drowning sailors. Even if you're a big MAGA guy or gal who approves of this sort of stuff, we can tell you for sure it will not play well in Europe at all, and is likely to push European leaders towards Sanchez's position. As we mentioned earlier, the latest edition of our magazine Too Long
Interesting.
is out very soon. And if you subscribe using code SPRING26, then you'll get your first copy for as little as £4.99.
Okay. Interesting. That was an interesting video for sure. It really, really, really kind of brought out the other side of things. Very, very interesting. That most of Europe will stand in like the same as Spain. Yeah, I'm not really against Spain's position. I'm not really for it neither. I'm just kind of confused as to why, like what's going on. So I can see how that could happen. I just found it very, very confusing. But like I stated in the other video, there's a lot of things that are going so sideways in Spain that it's hard for me to kind of, when you already have a bad taste from a person, it's hard for you to agree with anything. So, but okay. I'm intrigued to see your comments on this one, guys, and thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you found it informative. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!